the early days fighting with the Human Torch to the more recent MCU father figure relationship with Tony Stark, no matter who Spider-Man works with, it's going to change the game. Here's surprising Spider-Man team-ups that changed everything. The introduction of the Black Spider suit, aka Venom, was earth-shattering. Literally, it happened in the comics on Battle World when the heroes and villains were all actively brawling, but even metaphorically speaking, Peter wearing the black suit was a cultural reset. It introduced Venom to the Marvel canon, and that character has now become wildly successful all on their own and bonded to so many other Marvel heroes. The introduction of Venom created this whole new world that is ever evolving and introducing new characters every single year. It also spawned the Venom movies that did so well the company that released them, Sony, decided to start their own Spider cinematic universe. So when you're sat in the theater watching Kraven the Hunter and wondering how he got here, you can blame Venom. Venom, as a sim, takes on the appearance of his host, like if he takes over a horse, he looks like a horse. But as my roommate kept pointing out while we were watching Venom 2018, and also anyone looking at photos of the OG Venom look from 1984's Secret Wars, his human look looks a lot like Spider-Man. And that's just cause he was introduced on Spider-Man. He imprinted on him. The look of Peter's OG spider suit inspired Venom, though Peter thought it was his subconscious thinking it was Spider-Woman 2's suit. Many of Venom's powers are also really close to Spider-Man's, again because that's where he got them. Venom learned to stick to walls and shoot webs while bonded with Peter, and just kept those traits when they separated because why would you give them up? Also, finally, the effect that Bully Maguire from Spider-Man 3 had, cultural reset in itself. In 9th place is Spider-Man and Deadpool. Spider-Man, when you put him next to all the other heroes, he's like the class clown. He's making the little quips and he's having fun. Put him next to Deadpool though, and suddenly Spider-Man is all business. Spider-Man and Deadpool, they quickly became a fan favorite friendship after they first fought in Cable and Deadpool 24. So popular that they had their own comic run from 2016 to 2019 with 51 issues. People liked their dynamic and the fact that Deadpool is trying his hardest to get under Spidey's skin and suit. It also helps that they visually look kind of similar with the red suits. They already look like a little team. Number 8 is that time Spider-Man briefly joined the X-Men and even taught at the school. After the demise of Wolverine, Spider-Man began teaching at the school even though he is not a mutant. The reason why was Wolverine needed Spider-Man to find a mole, and it would just be easier for him to find since he was an unbiased third party. Despite his underlying mission, Peter did his best and truly believed in his students. He helped them come into their own and develop their powers. But what I find so funny though about the whole like X-Men and Spider-Man thing is the argument is always, why are people so chill with heroes like Spider-Man but they hate mutants? And J. Jonah Jameson is like, actually, I'm gonna flip the script here. I love mutants and I absolutely despise Spider-Man. In his early days, Spider-Man was also asked to join the X-Men, but he wasn't looking for a team at the moment. In 7th place, we have the relationship between Peter Parker and Tony Stark in the MCU. This changed a lot about Peter Parker's character because he wasn't really poor anymore. This is actually a major complaint a lot of people have when it comes to Tom Holland's Spider-Man. He is supposed to struggle a bit. That was a big part of his character early on in the comics. It's also why a lot of people connected to him. This guy who gets knocked down by not just the villain of the day, but also his personal life, but keeps getting up, it's inspiring. He worked with what he had and he became the best hero he could be despite not having unlimited resources. That's obviously very different in the MCU, pre-No Way Home. Peter makes his first suit, but the others are all provided by Tony. Tony also acts as a mentor figure at times. Peter does still learn a lot of lessons on his own, but Tony did show him the ropes when it came to things like being in space. Or there's the iconic, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. The representation of their relationship in the MCU is pretty different from the comics. I'm sorry to tell anyone who is exclusively a movie fan, but they don't always get along. I think Tony literally threw Peter across New York once. Tony's father figureness towards Peter also directly resulted in this next team up that eventually ruined Peter's life. So our 6th spot is for another MCU team up, one that taught Peter that you can't trust everyone no matter how nice they might seem. I am talking about that of Mysterio and Spider-Man from Spider-Man Far From Home. This team up altered Peter's brain chemistry. Literally, it unlocked his spider sense. Okay, not really. Peter already had it, but the scene of him fighting all the drones on the bridge was him really trusting himself for the first time. As much as I hate to see Peter hurting, that is a fundamental part of his character, and if he hadn't been betrayed by Mysterio, he wouldn't have learned who his real support system was, and they were a necessity for his next movie. No pain, no gain. Plus, the Mysterio team-up resulted in Peter's identity being revealed to the world, which ultimately led to Peter's life completely flipping on its head and he lost everything. Alright, number 5 goes to Spider-Man and Spider-Man, aka Miles Morales and Peter Parker. If you look at this through the lens of the Spider-Verse movies, Miles meeting Peter changed the course of his life on impact. There's literally a scene where you can see Miles' life trajectory change in a matter of seconds. The moment is when he's sitting in front of his Spider-Man and the colors around his head change from the Prowler green and purple to the Spider-Man blue and red. Then, you know, he was like set on a mission to save the multiverse, in which he met his lifelong friends and then later discovered he actually changed the Spider-Man canon, kind of, by becoming Spider-Man, and he was the first anomaly. So yeah, the game was changed with Miles Morales. Miles and Peter meeting in the comics was one of the things that alerted everyone to the impending incursions, and that also really changed the worlds. In spot 4, I have to put one of the Fantastic Four, I mean it is in the name, the Human Torch. This was one of Spider-Man's first ever official team-ups. It was the first of the Marvel team-up comic run from the 1970s. This friendly, co-worker, super relationship has stood the test of time and set Peter up with the skills to continue working with other heroes instead of just being a loner. Spider-Man even rejected a few teams at first because he thought it was his destiny to always work alone. Spider-Man actually tried joining the Fantastic Four right at the start of his journey, but it was because he was looking for a job because he realized he can't cash checks as Spider-Man, so he needed to join a super team with a salary. 1 against 4, he did destroy the team and portions of their lab, only to swing from the window upon finding out they don't in fact pay. 3 spiders for spot number 3. Was there anything more surprising than seeing 3 Spider-Man team up in Spider-Man No Way Home? Like, sure, everybody speculated that it was going to happen, but we were also all ready for it to not happen because the idea was so absurd. There was a high chance Marvel would never make this dream come true, but literally thank goodness that they did. I don't know about y'all, but I remember seeing that scene in theaters for the first time. The energy was unmatched and I've been chasing that high ever since. This scene changed the MCU for better. Well, that's up for debate, but it certainly changed it for good. The comics have been doing the multiverse thing for decades, but the MCU hadn't really touched it. There were glimpses of it. I am not here to erase Doctor Strange, that's a great movie, or the new Gamora from Endgame, but the idea of having multiple of the same person from different universes on screen at the same time fighting together, that was not something the MCU had done before. Spider-Man was the right hero for Marvel's first real dive into the multiverse, in my opinion. However, did the MCU get better after it started going all in with the multiverse after seeing the success of No Way Home? Some would argue no. No matter what though, you can't deny that the triple spider swing was a benchmark in the history of the MCU and nothing has been the same since. Our runner-up today, because I really wanted to mention it, is Tom Holland and Zendaya. Holland and Zendaya's team up for the Spider-Man movies changed the trajectory of their lives, not only launching both their careers even further, but also was a first step towards them literally finding their soulmate. Can you tell I'm excited about a Peter and MJ couple breaking the spider curse and getting engaged? I'm so happy for them. Number 1 is going to make some people mad, but Spider-Man's team up with Mephisto. I am in fact referencing the cursed moment when Peter gave up his marriage with MJ to save Aunt May. It literally changed everything. As much as we all hate the call, you can't deny that the world was not the same after those two made a deal. And I don't even mean just the 616 universe's history changing, but since this deal with the devil, things have changed in the way Marvel writers are allowed to tell Peter's story going forward. A Marvel editor went viral in 2024 for saying that if a writer wanted to make MJ and Peter a couple again, that's fine, they just can't get married. And that's the rule now, Peter can't get married.
While they can definitely be brutal together, who is more brutal between them, do you think? Deadpool or Wolverine? Probably one of the most brutal Deadpool and Wolverine team-ups that I've ever read happened more recently in the comics in the current Wolverine series, which started back in 2020. In issue number 22, Deadpool and Wolverine are basically in the midst of a mission, kinda together. They end up acquiring what appears to be Danger's baby, basically, and during their escape with the goods, Wolverine pretty brutally uses Deadpool. It's some of the worst behavior I've seen from Wolverine to Deadpool before. I mean, I know they're not always kind to each other, but wow. And Wolverine is not known, like I said, for being nice to Wade normally, so it's pretty bad, guys. This is pretty brutal. Who do you think is the kindest to Deadpool, and who do you think treats him the most brutally? Is it Wolverine or is it someone else? Cable's gotta be up there too, to be honest. The first time Wolverine and Deadpool even crossed paths, it was pretty brutal and gruesome, to be honest with you. The first time running into each other, at least in regards to comic book history, although I don't think canonically this is the first time, would be in Wolverine issue number 88 from the 1988 series, considered volume 2. It all goes down when Deadpool decides to pay Garrison Kane a visit at the very same time that Wolverine does. Or just before, rather. Wolverine is there to basically check in on Garrison on behalf of his friend James Hudson, aka Guardian, who you might know from Alpha Flight, but Deadpool arrived just a little bit before to find Kane so that he might get to his ex, Vanessa Carlyle, who he heard was running around with Cyborg. Deadpool basically trashes the place looking for any clues to where they might be and can't find Garrison or Vanessa, and he also can't figure out like where they would be. When Wolverine arrives, Wade's like basically all worked up and he's just ready to fight the old knucklehead. He's like, who's this? Let's go. Making quick work of him too when Logan leaps over Deadpool, kicking him in the face just as Deadpool comes up underneath Wolverine and basically shish kebabs him. Ouch. Looks like Wolverine might be getting some revenge for this move though in the new Deadpool and Wolverine film, so yeah, it's coming up with the claws, you know? This team up starts as most do as a versus. In the 1999 annual issue of Wolverine, Wolverine has actually come to get some payback for their last fight. While Wolverine came out on top in that encounter, Deadpool's ally in the fight, Dr. Bong, ended up giving Kitty Pryde a run for her money, bringing her around basically, put her in a dome and just discombobulated her. Discombobulate. So Wolverine was mainly here to get in a few punches on Kitty's behalf this time. However, the fight quickly shifts from versus to a team up when the duo's fight ends up basically smashing into some werewolf matters. They end up then forced to work together to fight against the werewolves, and by the end of the fight, with one final crunchy punch to Wade's head, Wolverine decides that yeah, they can call it even now. This next one is actually just a moment in time. The final end to the AXE Judgment Day tie-in story that we saw unfold in X-Force. Overall, I honestly have thoughts about this story in regards to how it tied in and connected with the main event here, but that's not what we're here to talk about. That's a whole other topic I could get into. We're here to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. Basically, in this final issue in this story, X-Force issue number 33 from the 2019 run of the X-Force series, Deadpool and Wolverine end up teaming in a sort of pseudo-Savage Land. It isn't really the Savage Land though, it's actually the X-Force's Shadow Room, which is basically like a holodeck. Basically think the Danger Room, that's what we're doing here pretty much. At the end of the story, the Shadow Room is collapsing in on itself and Deadpool makes a break for Wolverine to help in his fight against Kraven, who has basically turned the room into his own dreamlike hunting grounds. Basically, Kraven has dubbed Wolverine the ultimate prey in this story, but don't worry because Wade is here to save the day. Sort of. As Deadpool states here, he hasn't really been super useful in this story except as comic relief, and that remains a fact when he rushes in to save Wolverine. Instead, as he currently has a body mostly made out of plants gifted to him by Black Tom after being reduced to just a head, he steps too close to some lava and watches as his plant-based bod goes up in flames, reducing him to a big head, baby body Deadpool. Wolverine then grabs up little Wade and makes a mad dash out of there, escaping just in time and leaving Kraven to be munched by a T-Rex. Don't worry though, because this all went down in the Shadow Room, of course. So Kraven is left pretty much just badly beat up and of course survives, as we see on, well, pretty much the next page. So yeah. In one of the most millennium feeling stories of all time, also very 90s feeling, probably because of the art, Wolverine ends up facing off against Wade. This happens because Deadpool has been tasked with acquiring Wolverine as payment for some medical bills, basically. Not his medical bill, obviously, hello, healing factor, but the medical bills of Siren, Teresa Cassidy. Deadpool is trying to get help for her and in exchange has basically promised to bring Wolverine to those who are offering to help her. He does so successfully, wearing Wolverine down before filling him full of tranquilizers. This next one we're talking about is less brutal in the sense of an epic fight between our two heroes, and more brutal in the sense of what was going on with Wade here when Wolverine intervened. Deadpool, you see, had been kidnapped and was being held by an organization that sought to use him as a test subject to find a cure for the legacy virus, because they wanted to market it and like make a bunch of money. But the fact that he was kidnapped to be a test subject against his will should tell you, what their process is like here. They weren't gentle, and in fact, Slayback, one of Deadpool's enemies, yes, Slayback is a real character, had actually been hired by the group and spent much of his time on the project tormenting Wade, carving out a tic-tac-toe game on his chest multiple times, and then they're basically playing like tic-tac-toe. Fortunately, Maverick and Wolverine teamed up to get Wade out of there and were able to escape the facility just before its self-destruct countdown was complete. Gotta jump out of that explosion, you know? At one point, Deadpool goes to Dr. Bong for some psychiatric advice, and as expected, the advice he gets is pretty wild, because Dr. Bong himself is honestly kind of a little crazy, and I don't think he's a legal doctor. He suggests that Deadpool resolves some of his past trauma by duking it out with Wolverine, and the fight that ensues is so brutal it allows Deadpool to actually have a psychiatric breakthrough. Yeah, it actually works. And yes, that is the fight that basically leads them to have a rematch later on when they crash into the werewolves. It's all connected in the great circle of brutal beatdowns. In X-Men Origins Wolverine, Deadpool ends up making his first cinematic appearance. Kind of. He never gets the name of Deadpool explicitly, and instead is basically referred to as like being like a weapon. This version of Wade is also very different from the comic book version we are familiar with. While initially appearing as a wisecracking mercenary before he's mutated, afterward his mouth is basically taken away, and he's made to look pretty much, well, nothing like his comic book version. Right down to his signature katanas. I mean, he does have those. In the comics, Deadpool typically wields them, these dual katana blades, which the team working on X-Men Origins Wolverine thought could be a lot cooler if they were implanted in Deadpool's arms and were extendable and retractable, like Wolverine's adamantium-coated bone claws. Oh boy. I love that they were like, it has to be like that because it'll be way cooler. I'm like, will it be way cooler though? Will it be? I don't know. During his adventures with Cable, Wolverine crashed the party while the two were separated. Because of the crowd Wade was, let's say, kind of running with at the time, as his friend Weasel had basically taken up with Hydra, Wolverine ends up fighting Deadpool and removing his head from his body. This all goes down in issue number 43 of Cable and Deadpool, and by the next issue, the title is just temporarily hijacked, with Cable's name being crossed out and Wolverine's being written over it, as Wolverine and Deadpool continue their fight in the following issue, in issue number 44. A humorous kind of brutal interaction, if you will, mainly happens between Deadpool and an alternate version of himself here. But Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is also implied to be there at the time, and it does technically take place in Wolverine's movie, of course, X-Men Origins Wolverine. This is when Deadpool uses Cable's time-traveling device to basically fix the mistaken portrayal of him in his past, traveling over to this film so that he could put his former depiction out of his misery by just straight up eliminating him. Put us all out of that misery, so thank you, Deadpool.
In at number 10, Thanos and the Thing. The saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," rings ever so true when it comes to the odd pairing of Thanos and the Thing. Ben Grimm has been part of the Fantastic Four for a long time and is well aware of the horrible villains that exist throughout the Marvel Universe. As a result of his space explorations with the Fantastic Four, he's come into contact with Thanos on a number of occasions. Recognizing just how dangerous the Mad Titan is, the Fantastic Four have shut down a number of evil plans Thanos had up his big gold glove. However, during the Secret Wars timeline, the narrative between the Thing and Thanos kinda changed. At the start, Ben Grimm was acting as the vast wall to protect the God Emperor Doom and was in charge of keeping out the people who sought to overthrow him. However, in comes Thanos, who took a different approach to breaching the wall. Instead, he leveled with the Thing and helped him escape this boring service of just acting like a wall. Thanos reminded Ben that the world was not right and that it needed him. Whether or not these words came with ill intentions, it was still a superhero supervillain team up against Dr. Doom that you wouldn't believe would ever exist. In at number 9, Dracula and the X-Men. The X-Men and Dracula have gone head to head on a number of occasions in the past. The Lord of Vampires even attempted to force Storm into marrying him. Gross. Although after some time it turned out they hated his son. You see, his son was planning a much more evil takeover than anything his father had ever attempted. Seeking to take his father's spot as the top vampire supervillain, he engineered this biological weapon. The weapon's purpose was to turn regular civilians into bloodthirsty vampires. In a surprising turn of events though, the X-Men, Dracula, and even Blade joined forces in order to restore order to the world. Although he was able to turn Jubilee right before they could defeat him, Dracula did give her an amulet that would combat this new fear of sunlight. Consider it a gift of appreciation to the X-Men. Still an unlikely team up. In at number 8, Nova and Carnage. During the event known as Axis, the Uncanny Avengers were attempting to stop the Red Skull who had stolen Charles Xavier's brain. I know, gross, right? In comes Magneto, who demolishes the villain, but accidentally unlocks this psionic energy within him that releases Onslaught into the universe. Now with Onslaught being the Uncanny Avengers' biggest threat, the Scarlet Witch decided to reverse the alignments of the heroes and villains. Carnage just happened to be amongst them when this went down, so in a strange turn of events, Carnage actually started to befriend Nova. Although this odd team up only lasted for a moment and purely out of circumstance, they were working together. Eventually the spell was reversed though, and Carnage went back to his usual crazy self. In at number 7, Galactus and Cosmic Ghost Rider. We know this list is supposed to be the top team ups you won't believe exist, but I just have to add that this team up is by far the coolest team up ever, without a doubt. First of all, you have this possible future where Thanos just completely decimates the Earth, taking out all of the heroes, or so he thought. In comes Frank Castle, who survives and is now fueled by revenge. He cuts a deal with Mephisto to host the Spirit of Vengeance, although in his hunt for Thanos on Earth, he realizes that the Mad Titan had already left. Then you get the supervillain Galactus arriving to Earth also in search of Thanos after barely making it through their battle. And the two make quite the team. In at number 6, Norman Osborn and the Sentry. This is a team up again that only really occurred out of pure circumstance. When learning about the details, you actually really start to sympathize with the Sentry and his inner struggles. After the final battle of the Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn swooped in, dispatching the Skrull Queen to be viewed as a national hero. Now with this prominent position in the public eye, he was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. In this position, he formed what was known as the Dark Avengers. The majority of the team was comprised of villains, with the Sentry being one of the few superheroes who agreed to stay. You see, Norman had convinced Bob Reynolds that he understood his internal battles with the Void. Not only did he show the Sentry compassion, but he promised that he could help him keep control over it. In at number 5, Hank Pym and Ultron. Standing as one of the definitely more unique hero-villain team-ups, Hank Pym viewed his creation of Ultron as one of his greatest regrets, and after the events of Rage of Ultron, both Hank and Ultron had merged with one another. There's actually still a belief that traces of Hank can still be found within Ultron, even though he denied this when confronted by Adam Warlock in Infinity Countdown. This isn't necessarily a team-up for the sake of fighting off a greater force, but rather an attempt by Hank Pym to stop Ultron. Nonetheless, even forced together, the two had to still work with each other from time to time. In at number 4, Deathlock and Uncanny X-Force. With the Marvel Universe having so many alternate timelines and possible futures, the one that saw the rise of Deathlocks was perhaps the most grim. Many of the Marvel heroes were converted into Deathlocks, which became a mandate just like the Superhuman Registration Act. Cut to present day, the Deathlocks arrived attempting to steal Phantom X's artificial portable biome, which was called the World. Deathlock Prime was able to overpower these new violent tendencies with logic and reasoning. With his newfound hope, he sought to help Phantom X against his former team. He actually succeeds in protecting the world, and as a result of his good deed, he teams up with the X-Force. Over time, Deathlock established himself as a friend of the X-Men, and even began to lecture at Logan's Jean Grey School. In at number 3, Super Skrull and Nova. This is a true tale of how just one team up could alter a character's whole reality. See, Super Skrull had been on the receiving end of mockery by his people for a long time after failing to take down the Fantastic Four. However, during the events of Annihilation, he put this behind him in order to protect his people not just from the Annihilation Wave, but soon Ultron as well. Super Skrull could not have done this alone though. Teaming up with Nova and his team of cosmic heroes, Super Skrull was finally able to redeem himself. With the help of Nova, he was able to return to his home, but this time he was praised for his efforts. They even made him a representative for intergalactic affairs. In at number 2, Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange. Sounds like a reality show. Right before Secret Wars, the majority of the Marvel multiverse was just beginning to collapse. Each unique world began crashing into one another, leaving almost nothing left. This catastrophic problem would require the universe's greatest minds to set aside their differences and combine their efforts in order to save, well, everything and everyone. The two people we're speaking about is Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, along with some help by Molecule Man of course. The Beyonders happen to be the cause of all of these issues, so both men decided the only way was to steal their power. Eventually they succeeded, but this also enacted the new reign of the God Emperor Doom, who put Doctor Strange as kind of his right hand man, making Strange essentially a sheriff that would uphold Doom's new laws. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Annihilus and the Avengers. As we reach the end of this list, it's funny to look at how some of these villains go from such evil plots to becoming key players in assisting the superheroes. Annihilus is one of those stories. Once known as the largest threat in the Marvel Universe, he used his cosmic control rod combined with his annihilation wave to leave nothing but total destruction throughout the cosmos. Eventually Nova and his alliance was able to put a stop to this madness, but Annihilus would soon return. However, this time he was in the form of a larvae which would regrow into his previous self. Soon enough though, Annihilus was now part of the Intergalactic Councils during the events of Infinity. This was the largest council of nations across space and even included the Avengers. At the time, the Avengers' main focus was attempting to stop the Builders from wiping out the universe, and as part of his new role, Annihilus lended a hand.
At number 10, we have Valkyrie. This is one of the more understandable team-ups on the list, considering both Thor and Valkyrie are known to be loyal to the same cause. Speaking of course about the prosperity of Asgard and the protection of the 9 realms. In one particular instance, during the Ragnarok event, Valkyrie and Thor team up in an effort to save Asgard from total destruction at the hands of Hela, and they even take on Thanos at one point. Although they are ultimately unsuccessful and Asgard is destroyed, this is no doubt an epic union between these two heroes. And we can expect them to come together again down the line, knowing that they have a deep respect for each other and very similar stakes on the table. At number 9, we have Hercules. Thor and Herc come together a few different times, both as allies and as enemies, but of course we'll be focusing on their team-ups for this list. At one point, Hercules finds himself under the control of the Greek god Pluto, having been tricked into ruling the Netherworld after signing a film contract. Undoubtedly a bizarre situation to find himself in, but nonetheless, he gets help from Thor, who had previously been more of an adversary to Herc. In fact, before the actual team up that this entry is about, Hercules and Thor fight a few more times accidentally, which is really weird because it starts to paint Hercules as this very confused and possibly, I don't know, insecure character who doesn't seem to know what he really wants. Finally, they do end up teaming together and they team up to take down the Wrecking Crew. Later, Herc becomes an ally to the Avengers, which makes for a few more team-ups with the God of Thunder, most notably during the Operation Galactic Storm storyline. At number 8, we have Thor's team-up with Iron Man. Although this pair tend to be known to butt heads from time to time, there have been a number of cases of them fighting alongside one another. Of course they have, they're both part of the same very famous superhero team, the Avengers, but I'm not referring to their time on the Avengers, I'm looking at the times when the two heroes go off on their own. One of these times is during the God Complex storyline as part of their 2010 mini-series of comics called Iron Man / Thor, fittingly. And the threat they're up against isn't a joke either. They're trying to stop the High Evolutionary from creating a modern god from nothing, using Iron Man as the vessel. So it's good that Tony Stark has Thor on his side for this one, because dealing with gods and mysticism isn't always the easiest to do on your own if you're immortal, no matter how much money and tech you have. At number 7 is none other than Captain America. Aside from the obvious reason to team up, Thor and Captain America have a pretty healthy relationship going, just the two of them. Possibly the most notable instance of the two teaming up is during the Avengers Prime miniseries when they go to Hell and fight Hela, Thor's sister. Although Iron Man is there as well, Thor and Tony Stark aren't really getting along during this issue, and it more so outlines the relationship between Thor and Cap, both on and off the battlefield. And this is a pretty notable team up as well, given the stakes and the villain they're facing. Hela is one of the most powerful threats out there, and Hell is her domain naturally, so having Captain America there is really important, because if Thor was just accompanied by Iron Man, given their frustrations, it may not have been a successful mission for either of them. They do end up succeeding, and yes, Thor and Iron Man do come back together as friends. But it takes a pretty harrowing battle in the underworld to make that happen, and Captain America's leadership is essential to their success. At number 6, we have the Hulk. In Thor Ragnarok, Thor and the Hulk come together as a team in an unusual occurrence when they face off against Loki, and they make a surprisingly fitting duo, both having been banished from their homeworlds and forced to face off in this strange gladiatorial arena. At this point in the story, Thor is banished from Asgard and without his hammer, and Hulk finds himself lost on a distant planet, banished from Earth. At this point, he's being used as nothing more than a subject for this planet's violent arena matches, and he even gets pitted against Thor before they eventually decide to team up. So when they do decide to defy their captors and fly back back to where they came from, there's more than their combined strength that drives them forward. A bond based on their own experiences with abandonment and desperation leads them to an epic win over Loki by the end of the movie. At number 5 is Thor's epic team up with Rocket and Groot. This alliance makes for a really powerful combo because when they come together, they actually manage to fend off Thanos, one of the greatest threats in all of the cosmos. When Wakanda is invaded by Thanos, T'Challa is forced to turn to external aid to keep his world from being taken over by Thanos. And the unlikely pairing of Thor, Rocket, and Groot come in to fend off the Horde. You may call it luck that allows the outcome from this battle to end well for the good guys, but I'd say it's something about this union of heroes that makes their effectiveness work so well. Maybe it was something about the fact that Thor had just been beaten down till near death by Thanos before he met up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, or maybe their powers just happened to synergize perfectly with one another. Either way, we are left with what has become one of the most epic lines in all of Infinity War. Bring me Thanos. I'm not gonna do it justice, you just gotta look it up. At number 4 is Beta Ray Bill. Thor and Beta Ray Bill have come together on numerous occasions, them being very close friends and allies on and off the battlefield. And whenever they do pair up as a team, their bond really gives them that edge that makes them thrive. Now, is it their bond or is it the fact that they're both wielding Asgardian hammers made from Uru? It might be both. Let's just say it's both. Team-ups between these two usually involve some kind of high-stakes predicament that Asgard finds itself in. For instance, one of the more recent team-ups they've had was the second coming of Ragnarok and the defeat of the Fenris Wolf. Thor eventually sends Bill away to continue his work alone, but there's no doubt that soon enough they come back together to kick some ass for the glory of Asgard. Also, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there are theories suggesting that Beta Ray Bill might make an appearance in the new Thor Love and Thunder movie coming out in July. If you know about that one frame going around online with what looks like a missing character, then you may know what I mean. But that's still speculation, so we'll see. Alright, at number 3 is Galactus. This is a really unexpected team up that happens in Thor number 168 and 169 when Galactus actually finds himself in danger at the hands of the Black Winter. So in response to this, Galactus decides to grant Thor a boost of power to become his herald. With this newfound ally, Galactus is able to use Thor's help to take down the Black Winter, as harrowing of a task as it is. This is such a crazy team up, which is why I put it higher on the list. A being as great as Galactus doesn't often find himself in danger, nor does he find himself needing an ally to fight off a formidable threat. But in this instance it happens, and it becomes one of the most unique and powerful Thor team-ups we've ever seen. Thor doesn't really stay loyal to Galactus though, which is a good move because we all know that Galactus wasn't about to turn good after the job was finished. So Thor ends up stealing the entire power cosmic, supercharging himself into one of the most powerful versions of him that we've ever seen. He then uses this power to take down both Galactus and the Black Winter, one of his most impressive feats to date. At number 2 is Jane Foster. I mean, do I have to explain why this one gets put at number 2? This team up gains a huge boost in points due to the iconic and romantic factor. These two have had an on-again, off-again relationship that has brought Jane into positions of power on Asgard and then back into average life on Earth. But in one epic return to form in Avengers number 56, Jane begins to recognize that her humble marriage to Thor might not be as it seems. And when she's proven right, Mephisto is revealed to have been behind an elaborate ruse the whole time. This triggers a Thor from somewhere in the multiverse to come and support Jane Foster in her battle against Mephisto, who appears in the form of 3 pigs. And yes, I know that Jane is known as Valkyrie during this fight, and basically ever since her first run as Thor, but these mantles get thrown around so much that I wanted to explore the only constant, which in this case is Jane Foster. And this isn't the last time these two have or will team up. Whoever's seen the new Thor Love and Thunder trailer knows that she is also going to be making quite the appearance in the new movie coming out in July. Romantic team-ups should always rank high on these lists. Power levels aren't the only thing to consider when two heroes come together. At number 1 is of course Thor's epic and somewhat rare team-up with his brother Loki. Actually, maybe this does happen a few times, but it's mainly because of Thor's tolerance and love for his brother more than anything. Loki still typically makes decisions only if they serve him, but I digress. One of these team-ups happens in one of the earlier comics when Loki decides he'd prefer to have his father Odin rule over Asgard instead of Searcher, so he teams up with Thor to repel the demon's advances. And another time is of course in Thor: The Dark World, when Loki and Thor come together once more with the common motive to take revenge on their mother's killer. And then once again, so yeah, it happens a lot, once again they face off against Hela in Ragnarok. But the most notable team up, if we can call it that, is when Loki sacrifices himself to protect Thor from the Mad Titan. As we all know, these team ups all get so much more respect based on the typical relationship between these two siblings, which is rocky to say the least. So when they do come together, it's often very dramatic and even a bit emotional. And that's what epic team-ups are all about, right? The context behind why and how a pair of superpowered beings decide to support each other in battle.
At number 10 is Carnage and the Joker. Sounds like absolute chaos. As the Marvel and DC universes converged, the plot unfolded with a certain unnaturalness as Dr. Cassandra Breyer's audacious attempt to pacify these two malevolent menaces using microchips took an ominous turn when Carnage, the symbiote psychopath, effortlessly short-circuited the implant. Meanwhile, the Joker, not to be outdone, suffered a similar fate. This nightmarish duo then embarked on an unaliving spree with their unholy union a brief affair. However, there was a clash between them, driven by differing philosophies on eliminating people, which culminated in an epic showdown with Batman and Spider-Man. You see, Joker was all about having a plan, and Carnage was like, screw that, let's just cause chaos, and apparently, their different philosophies didn't coalesce. Carnage and the Joker's inability to cooperate, while expected, was a fortunate twist, preventing unimaginable catastrophe. I mean, had these two serial unalivers coordinated, countless lives would have been lost to their chaotic malevolence. At number 9 is the Leader and the One Below All. Comic world has witnessed some spine-tingling team-ups, but few saw the nightmarish alliance between the Hulk's arch-nemesis, the Leader, and the malevolent cosmic entity known as the One Below All. The Jade Giant, who's known for smashing his way through the MCU, has transformed into a true horror icon in the comics thanks to the masterful storytelling in Immortal Hulk. Enter the One Below All, which is a sinister, demonic force that Samuel Stearns, the brilliant but deranged leader, willingly submits to. His aim is to obliterate not only the Hulk, but the entire world, morphing it into a grotesque Cronenberg-esque nightmare. The unholy partnership has taken the Hulk's adversaries to a whole new level of terror, creating a chilling narrative that keeps fans on the edge of their seats. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Joker and the Violator. Okay, a Carnage and Joker crossover was cool and all, but how about the Joker working with a literal demon clown from Spawn, if you haven't guessed? Violator, an immortal servant of Satan with inhuman strength and fire-breathing abilities, now allies himself with the Joker in a multiverse-shaking partnership. Batman and Spawn, facing the Court of Owls, reluctantly seek Joker's help, only to discover that they've fallen into a trap orchestrated by the Joker and the Violator. The history of the Joker's unholy alliance suggests likely a monstrous transformation later down the road, but betrayal could also be on the horizon. As the two most feared clowns in comics unite, the questions arise about Joker's transformation under the Violator's influence and his ultimate strategy against such a potent source of evil. At number 7 are the Marvel Zombies. In the twisted Marvel Zombies universe, where heroes hunger for the flesh of the living, an unexpected and mind-boggling team unfolded. You see, Galactus, the cosmic devourer of worlds, was rendered into a grotesque figure, a far cry from his formidable 616 incarnation. You see, in this nightmarish reality, Galactus manifested as a corporeal being which is vulnerable to the insatiable appetites of the zombie Avengers. It's kind of weird because these undead mortals eventually feast upon a cosmic entity known for its indomitable might. While it's explained that the Galactus of Earth 2149 was crafted from flesh, a startling departure from what we're used to. Because as he's depicted in 616, Galactus' true form isn't a physical body, but rather abstract energy. The big dude in a funny suit we see is just what our minds can comprehend, like how Pennywise is actually a cosmic spider. So anyway, Mark Millar's zombie series introduced this shocking image of the zombies eating Galactus, leaving subsequent writers little choice but follow suit. As the zombie Avengers devoured Galactus, they unwittingly inherited his purpose, setting off a multiversal buffet until the cosmic meal dwindled and the cosmic power ran out, returning them to their ravenous roots. At number 6 are the Secret Six, a team once heralded as heroes back in the 60s, but slowly became an unexpected amalgamation of villainy that took the comic world by surprise. Unlike your run-of-the-mill baddie alliances, this group incorporated a diverse roster with Deadshot, Bane, and Harley Quinn, and even the notorious Joker claiming membership. But what's truly shocking is the mysterious puppeteer known as Mockingbird. It's like discovering that Batman has been secretly pulling the strings for the Joker all along. The revelation that the Riddler or Lex Luthor also had their hands in the mix is sort of like unearthing the Pandora's box of villainy. These unexpected team-ups redefine the very essence of villainy and heroism, demonstrating that in the realm of comics, the line between good and evil can blur in the most spine-chilling ways. Speaking of which, at number 5 is Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. Spider-Man's most terrifying villain is allowed to form his own Avengers? Now that's scary. Following the Skrull invasion, Osborn seized control of S.H.I.E.L.D., manipulating them and the Thunderbolts to create his own sinister version of the Avengers under the guise of the Hammer Agency. What makes this alliance truly spine-chilling is the unsettling cast of heroes, quote-unquote, that Osborn assembled. Bullseye is posed as Hawkeye, Venom as Spider-Man, and Moonstone as Miss Marvel, each of them concealing their secretly malevolent intentions. Ares and Sentry, once heroes, found themselves tainted by their affiliation with Osborn's dark agenda. Yet, the most disturbing transformation lay in Daken, who assumed the mantle of Wolverine, and Noh-Varr, who became Captain Marvel. Norman himself adopted the Iron Patriot suit, twisting patriotism into something nightmarish. At number 4 is Magneto and Red Skull. In the convoluted tapestry of comic book alliances, the pairing of Red Skull and Magneto is nothing short of a paradoxical enigma. Two diametrically opposed figures, their shared history is a testament to the complexity in the Marvel Universe. Their initial encounter during the Acts of Vengeance storyline was marked by Magneto's seething contempt for the embodiment of the evil that Red Skull represents. This animosity is well-founded, considering Magneto's harrowing experiences during the event from World War II, which shall not be named. Yet, as the narrative threats of Marvel Comics tend to weave, we find Magneto standing shoulder to shoulder with the very antagonist he once despised. In Deadpool eliminates the Marvel Universe again, and in Old Man Logan, these universes both witnessed Magneto's unsettling alliance with Red Skull as they collaborated to further their nefarious ambition. This unlikely partnership serves as a testament to the ever-shifting alliances and allegiances and the moral ambiguities that define the Marvel Universe, where heroes and villains dance on a precarious tightrope of alliances and rivalry. At number 3, the Crime Master and Toxin. Let's take a look at the shocking collaboration between Flash Thompson, known as Agent Venom, and the notorious Crime Master during the Agent Venom storyline. See, at first glance, it seemed like an ordinary showdown between hero and villain, but beneath the surface, a sinister plot was unfolding. The Crime Master, the ever-cunning mastermind, developed a plan that transcended mere villainy. See, he coerced Eddie Brock, the former Venom, into joining his malevolent cause. However, his ambition didn't stop there. Using the formidable symbiote Toxin, the Crime Master forcibly merged it with Eddie, creating an unholy alliance. Together with the villains, they embarked on a campaign of terror, targeting not just Agent Venom, but also his loved one, revealing a level of malevolence that left readers in complete shock. At number 2 is Judge Joker. Now, the scariest villain team-ups often emerge when you least expect them, like when the Joker, infamous for his lack of superpowers, ventured beyond his universe. In the Batman/Judge Dredd's, Joker wields unimaginable powers after crossing into Judge Dredd's realm via a multiversal teleportation belt. He aids Judge Unalive, a malevolent entity seeking to annihilate all life across the multiverse. In return, Judge Unalive imparts sinister abilities upon Joker, transforming him into another dark judge. Joker's newfound power allows him to make heads explode with his laughter, a grotesque and quite fitting ability. Each dark judge gains powers tied to their obsessions, making Joker's lethal laughter a darkly logical choice. He becomes immortal in this form, impervious to harm. However, the Joker's return to his original self is a twist in itself. See, if he had retained these abilities, he'd be unstoppable amidst even DC's mightiest heroes. While it's disappointing for the Clown Prince of Crime, his cinematic presence would dwindle with these R-rated powers, a reminder that sometimes unexpected alliances lead to frankly horrifying outcomes. And at number 1 is the Injustice League. The Injustice League, a formidable gathering of DC's most notorious evildoers, is typically led by the brilliant Lex Luthor, featuring iconic antagonists like the Joker, Deathstroke, Black Manta, Cheetah, and Sinestro. The Injustice League is a force to be reckoned with. However, their effectiveness as a team pales in comparison to their individual endeavors, primarily due to the Justice League's seamless teamwork. Interestingly, for those seeking the Legion of Doom, think of it as a rebranding of the Injustice League. The Super Friends are essentially mirrored in the Justice League, sharing many members and embodying similar dynamics. And so much of what applies to the Injustice League also holds true for the Legion of Doom as well.
Number 10, Batman and Scooby-Doo. Batman and the gang of meddling kids from Mystery Incorporated actually have quite a long history together, teaming up during the days when Batman cartoons and Scooby-Doo cartoons were both being made by Hanna-Barbera for the odd animated special. Years later, this pairing would make its way into the pages of the comics, with the Dark Knight going on several adventures with the gang. It makes a certain kind of sense. I mean, Batman and the gang are all detectives, so they have a lot of intersecting interests. The comic book series also does a good job of going with a more Silver Age-y take on Batman, so there isn't as much of a clash in tone when Batman pulls Scooby snacks out of his utility belt. But there is still something kind of strange about the idea that Batman would get so stumped on a case that he would call in not another detective hero like, say, Barry Allen, but would go straight to a bunch of teenage jazz cabbage enthusiasts who live in a van with their dog. Number 9, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Ghostbusters. When Donatello of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles created an interspatial teleportation unit, he asked his brothers Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Raphael to help him test the device's capabilities. They go through the portal with their friends April O'Neil and Casey Jones and discover that the device has transported them to a different New York, the one featured in the Ghostbusters universe. They are immediately put face to face with an evil ghost who of course is immune to their attacks and captures and possesses Casey. Thankfully, they are soon saved by everyone's favorite group of paranormal exterminators, Venkman, Winston, Egon, and Ray, the Ghostbusters. The two groups team up and the combination works better than you might expect. There's a certain joy to seeing Venkman start to get on Raph's nerves, while Winston and Leonardo bond over how difficult it is to be the most normal one on a team. Plus, seeing Leonardo swap his bow staff for a proton pack is something I never knew I always wanted to see. Number 8, Superman and Muhammad Ali. This one is perhaps the most iconic of the weird team-ups ever put to panel. One day, Muhammad Ali is in Metropolis playing basketball with some local kids, and Lois, Jimmy, and Clark set out to get an interview with him. Just as they are about to begin their interview, an alien shows up and requests the greatest champion of Earth to fight in an alien boxing match. He has an armada of ships and is going to blow up Earth if they don't accept the challenge. Clark excuses himself and Superman shows up offering to fight. Ali retorts that he will fight the aliens as he is the greatest fighter on Earth. Superman points out that that is a stupid plan because he's, you know, Superman, but Ali reminds him that he's, you know, Muhammad Ali. The alien tells them that they will fight and the winner will face the alien champion. Ali and Superman go to the Fortress of Solitude to train, and Ali teaches Supes some of his moves before they are interrupted by the aliens, who inform them that the fight will take place on their homeworld, which has a red sun, meaning Superman won't have any powers. Ali points out that Superman is in serious trouble. The two have a boxing match, and Ali KOs Superman after a few rounds and goes on to fight the alien champion. It turns out that Superman and Ali fixed the fight, and while Ali fights, Superman is taking out the alien fleet. Ali wins the match and the Earth is saved. Later on Earth, Ali reveals that he has figured out Superman's secret identity, and the two shake hands as Ali declares, "Superman, we are the greatest." It's a weird story and kinda goofy, but it has become such a classic, and the dynamic between Superman and Muhammad Ali is actually so well done that it is worth reading. Number 7, The Avengers meet David Letterman. In Avengers number 239, Wonder Man is having a bit of a problem. He has been trying to make it as an actor, but it hasn't been working out. His agent is aware of his status as a reserve Avenger and books Wonder Man on David Letterman, claiming that he will be accompanied by some of the other Avengers. Wonder Man reaches out to Vision, who arranges for himself, Black Panther, Hawkeye, Beast, and Black Widow to join Wonder Man Spider-Man on the late-night talk show appearance. The villain, Fabian Stanowitz, otherwise known as the Meccano Marauder, sees the promo and decides that he will also be attending. The Avengers go on the show, and Dave interviews the group, getting the bombshell that Beast is leaving the Avengers to start the Defenders, but the interview is interrupted by an attack from Fabian's machines, while Paul Schaefer keeps the band playing to keep the crowd from panicking. Fabian sits down for an interview with Letterman, surrounding them with a force field so they won't be interrupted by the Avengers or the machines. Dave then uses his classic giant doorknob prop to knock out the villain, saving the day. Wonder Man is thrilled that his heroic exploits will be shown on television, but when the show is set to air, it is interrupted by a special news bulletin, and no one gets to see it. Number 6. The X-Men meet the crew of the Enterprise. Captain's log. Stardate 4740.5. The crew of the Enterprise came across an odd alien ship. They scanned it for life and saw that it was carrying 7 life forms that sensors indicated were near human. Before more information could be gathered, the ship exploded, and a giant creature calling himself the Gladiator appeared and punched the Enterprise. As the engineer, Mr. Scott, attempted to repair the damage to the shields, a group of stowaways who had beamed off the destroyed ship at the last moment came aboard. They called themselves the X-Men. So the X-Men had set off to save the galaxy, and were now hiding on the Enterprise, very confused as to how they had ended up in the future. Gambit was injured, and Beast took him to the ship's sickbay to find treatment. It was here that Dr. McCoy met Dr. McCoy. The remaining X-Men were discovered by Mr. Spock, who incapacitated Wolverine with the Vulcan nerve pinch and took the team to meet Captain Kirk so they could work together to defeat the villains. This is a fun story filled with some cool moments like the aforementioned Spock and Wolverine fight, as well as some fun character moments like Kirk trying to hit on Jean Grey. But the X-Men and Enterprise crew are an odd pair to pitch together, and the entire affair does feel pretty weird. Number 5. The Punisher meets Slim Shady. Getting into the really weird team-ups, we have the time that Frank Castle met Marshall Mathers. In this story, Eminem is leaving a concert with his security when they come across a strange man in a skull shirt in the alley. They pull their guns on him and get absolutely blown away while M makes a break for it. He's rescued by his childhood friend, the Barracuda, who helps him hide from Castle. When Punisher gets too close, Slim Shady beats him up and shoots him. Barracuda then takes out Eminem, and when he wakes up, he's on a boat tied back to back with the Punisher. Punisher explains that he was trying to protect Eminem and only took out his bodyguards because they pulled guns on him and probably all had rap sheets anyways. Barracuda explains that the Parents Music Council has hired him to kill Shady because they think his music is corrupting the youth. He throws M off the side of the boat, but the water is frozen and he manages to get away. He finds an ice fisherman, takes his chainsaw, and returns to the boat to save the Punisher. After freeing Frank, Punisher leaves Eminem stranded on the ice with a phone to call for help as he sets off to take out the Parents Music Council. After all, hiring a contract killer is a serious crime. What? This book is insane! Not just for the premise, but the fact that the Punisher doesn't do anything except get beaten up and later rescued by Eminem. But it isn't the weirdest Punisher crossover. More on that later. Number 4, Spider-Man and the cast of SNL. Live from New York, it's Spider Day Night Live! Starring Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, Jane Curtin, Garrett Morris, Bill Murray, Lorraine Newman, and Gilda Radner. In Marvel Team-Up number 74, Spider-Man got to team up with the classic Saturday Night Live cast in one of the weirdest team-ups in the Wall Crawlers history. Peter and MJ are attending a filming of Saturday Night Live, but little do they know that the show is about to be interrupted by the Silver Samurai, whose magic ring has been sent to John Belushi by accident due to his SNL Samurai character being mistaken for the Silver Samurai. Thugs try to take over the show, but the cast keeps the show going while taking out the thugs with the help of Spider-Man, while the two samurai face off backstage. It is extra weird because the celebrity host is Stan Lee, and the SNL cast are dressing up as Marvel characters. But in a world where Marvel heroes are real, what exactly is Stan Lee famous for? Number 3, Jimmy Olsen and Don Rickles. In Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 141, written by Jack Kirby, Kirby of all people, Jimmy teams up with the Golden Guardian and Goody Rickles, the superhero who just happens to look like the insult comic and Mr. Potato Head actor Don Rickles. They are poisoned by Intergang and have to find a cure before they explode. They end up at an office where the real Don Rickles is hanging out and just starts slowly going nuts as superhero hijinks take place around him. Eventually the heroes are cured, but Rickles is taken away by the police after claiming that he is going to explode in an effort to get away from Jimmy and his gang. It is a difficult story to follow and wouldn't make this list if it weren't for the weird detail of Don Rickles having a superhero who is not related to him, but is named Goody Rickles and just happens to look exactly like him. That's just all kinds of strange. Number 2, The Punisher meets Archie. In a crossover that started out as a joke between the publishers of the two characters, a criminal who looks remarkably like Archie is being chased by the Punisher. He escapes to Riverdale and the Punisher pursues him there. Archie is up to his usual hijinks, trying to date both Betty and Veronica, when a bunch of feds, mistaking him for his criminal doppelganger, take him away. They are attacked by the Punisher, who realizes his mistake and goes after the double who has taken Veronica to the town sock hop. Punisher goes to the dance and is mistaken for a chaperone by the teachers. Things go off the rails when the villain takes Veronica hostage and a shootout breaks out at the dance. The bad guy gets away with Ronnie and Archie has to team up with Frank to take him out. Archie starts keeping a war journal and Frank gets a nice Riverdale sweater as a gift, and together they save Veronica and stop the villain, who they tie to a giant balloon and let fly away, presumably so he will fly into the air and lose oxygen and die. As if all of this wasn't weird enough, the story ends with Professor X informing Wolverine that he has to go after the most dangerous mutant alive, Jughead. Number 1, Green Lantern and Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders has shown up in DC Comics stories a few times, having traveled the multiverse and hired Captain Cold and Mirror Master to work in his restaurants. But his weirdest story is when he teamed up with Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern. In this story, the Colonel is working with Ferris Air to test that his new packaging for his Zinger chicken sandwich will protect it for interstellar travel, as he wants to bring his food across the universe. He enlists the help of Green Lantern to help him deliver the food, and Hal agrees. As Hal tells him, every member of the Green Lantern Corps is working on this project. Meaning somewhere a planet is being attacked by Darkseid and the lanterns are delivering chicken sandwiches. The sandwiches are all stolen by the Orange Lantern Larfleeze, and Hal creates a KFC themed Green Lantern ring for the Colonel so they can go after the sandwiches. Sanders attacks Larfleeze with a drumstick construct, and Larfleeze admits that the Zinger chicken sandwich is the only thing that has ever satisfied his unending longing and hunger. Sanders uses his ring to create the first KFC on the planet Okara and lets Larfleeze sign on as a franchisee, assuming that the Orange Lantern can complete the training program to get his cooking to the Colonel's strict standards. This book is so weird. It's like those old Twinkie ads where Flash would defeat Weather Wizard with the delicious taste of Hostess Twinkie cakes, but instead of being one page long, it's the entire comic. So weird.